Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're diving into a topic that's so often whispered about if it's talked about at all. It's something that touches every single one of us, yet we rarely give it the spotlight it deserves, not for the pain it causes, but for the power it can unlock. I'm talking about rejection. You know, it's one of those unspoken truths, isn't it? We all experience it, but rarely do we delve into its depths. And the truth is, rejection doesn't just sting for a moment. It can haunt you. It can echo in the quiet spaces of your mind long after the event itself has passed. And yet, and this is the crucial part, it's the very doorway to the most powerful, most authentic version of yourself. Now, let me be crystal clear from the get-go. I'm not here to sprinkle sugar on it or hand you some generic feel-good pep talk. That's not what we do here. Rejection hurts. Period. It stings with an acute sharpness. It can feel like a burn searing through your confidence. It has this uncanny ability to rip open old wounds, scars you genuinely believed had healed and faded into the past. But here's the insight. The piece of the puzzle that most people completely miss. Rejection doesn't just have the power to break you, it has the profound capacity to awaken you. So why does it cut so deep? Why does it feel so intensely personal? It's because at its core, rejection isn't really a commentary on them. It's a mirror reflecting something about you. It speaks directly to the parts of your inner landscape that are still unresolved, the corners of your being that have remained unseen, the aspects of your soul that are yearning for healing. When someone delivers that no, when they create that distance, they're not just pushing you away in that isolated moment. On a deeper level, they're inadvertently revealing something they perceive, something that resonates from within you. It might be something you've consciously or unconsciously buried deep down. Something you haven't wanted to confront, perhaps, for a very long time. The brilliant psychologist Carl Jung once offered a profound insight on this. He said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." So I invite you to ask yourself, this truly reflect, what specific part of you gets triggered, gets activated when you face rejection? What hidden insecurity? What old fear suddenly rears its head and rises to the surface? What shadow long ignored is suddenly being cast into the light? And here's where things get really interesting, almost mystical. Rejection doesn't just show up randomly in your life. It's not a chaotic accident. More often than not, it appears with an almost uncanny timing, precisely when your soul is truly ready to evolve, to shed an old skin, to grow into its next chapter. This, my friends, is the very essence of true spiritual growth, that moment when pain transforms from an obstacle into the path itself. Understand this. It's not a punishment. It's an initiation. Maybe as I'm saying this, your mind is drifting back. You're remembering the last time it happened? The silence that screamed louder than words. The cold shoulder that chilled you to the bone, the message left unanswered hanging in the digital ether. You felt yourself break, didn't you? Maybe yet again. But what if I were to tell you that very moment of breaking was, in fact, your breakthrough? Because here's the cycle. Every time you find yourself chasing external validation, every time you seek that approval from outside yourself, you become dependent. You become fragile. You inadvertently become a slave to opinions and reactions that were never, ever yours to control in the first place. And in that desperate chase, in that moment of handing over your power, you lose the very thing that makes you truly, authentically magnetic, your sovereignty, your inner authority. You see, genuine, lasting attraction doesn't come from being universally accepted or liked. That's a fleeting, superficial game. True magnetism springs from something far rarer, something much deeper, a profound sense of self-sufficiency. When you finally stop begging for crumbs of approval, when you release that need to be validated by everyone you meet, you begin to radiate something that very few people ever truly access, a quiet, unshakable power. It's a strength that emanates from you, subtly declaring, "I am enough with or without your approval, with or without you." And here's a raw, uncomfortable truth that most of us don't want to face. The more desperately you chase someone or something, the more they tend to pull away. Why is that? It's because the human psyche, on an almost instinctual level, recoils from perceived neediness. It doesn't matter how pure your heart is or how sincere your intentions might be, desperation, unfortunately, often repels. This is precisely why cultivating a sense of detachment becomes a source of immense power. And I don't mean a cold, indifferent, or numb kind of detachment. I'm talking about a detachment rooted in the powerful remembrance of your inherent worth. But how do you actually reach that level of grounded, unshakable confidence? The path lies in facing your shadow. That part of you that you've perhaps hated, denied, or tried to hide from the world and even from yourself. The version of you that you sometimes wish wasn't there. This is the very heart of what we call shadow work. The courageous process of turning inward, not with the intention to fix yourself, but to reclaim the parts of yourself you abandoned long ago, perhaps in response to past hurts or rejections. Jung himself had a name for this profound journey, individuation. He described it as the sacred alchemical process of integrating all parts of yourself to become whole once more. And once you've walked through that metaphorical fire, once you've faced those disowned parts of yourself, external rejection begins to lose its devastating power over you, because you finally deeply understand the most fundamental truth: no one can truly reject you, unless on some level you are already rejecting yourself. Just think about it for a moment. How many times have you perhaps betrayed your own core values, silenced your authentic voice, or muted your deepest truth, all in an attempt to gain someone else's approval or acceptance? And yet, even after all that self-compromise, you might have still faced rejection. Not perhaps for being too much of who you are, but ironically for being inauthentic, for pretending, for chasing something that was never meant to define your worth in the first place. Here's a truth that very few people will ever tell you so directly. Real enduring attraction isn't a game of chess. It's not about clever manipulation tactics. It's certainly not about employing some form of reverse psychology. It is quite simply the natural, effortless magnetism that radiates from someone who has unequivocally chosen themselves. Someone who no longer needs to be chosen by others because they already are chosen by their own soul. This world, let's be honest, is filled with people desperately trying to please, constantly begging for scraps of attention, starving for a sense of affection and belonging. You truly want to stand out. You want to cultivate that undeniable presence. Then stop chasing. Stop begging. Stop contorting yourself to fit into molds that were never designed for you. Choose your own path. Chart your own course. Even if no one around you applauds. Even if it means walking alone for a while. Because here's a secret: solitude, when it's a conscious choice rather than a feared outcome, is an incredible source of power. And that quiet courage to walk your own path, even if it means walking alone for a season, that's what truly captivates. That's what makes people pause and take notice. That, my friends, is true attraction. Not a performance you put on for the world, but a presence you cultivate from within. So the next time you find yourself on the receiving end of rejection, instead of collapsing under its weight, I invite you to pause, take a deep breath, and then look inward. Ask yourself these crucial questions. Why did I give this person or this situation the power to define my worth? What unacknowledged truth about myself is this painful moment trying to reveal to me? Because maybe, just maybe, rejection isn't the dead end it feels like. Perhaps it's the very invitation you've been waiting for, an invitation to finally meet and embrace the version of yourself you've unknowingly been running from all along. Rejection, you see, isn't merely a source of pain. It's a powerful revelation. It holds up a mirror and shows you truths that most people in your life wouldn't dare voice, perhaps truths you haven't dared to voice to yourself. It compels you to get brutally, refreshingly honest with yourself, to finally face those parts of you that you've conveniently ignored or actively suppressed, to look squarely in the mirror and see with a clarity that can be both terrifying and liberating, not what the world thinks of you, but what you haven't yet resolved deep inside of you. Every no you encounter, every door that closes, is a mirror. It's a reflection of your current growth point. It's like a signpost on your journey clearly stating, this is where you still carry hurt. This is what you need to confront if you genuinely desire to evolve, to expand, to become more whole. And that, undeniably, is an uncomfortable truth. But it's also, paradoxically, the most liberating one you'll ever encounter. Because rejection doesn't lie. It points with an almost terrifying precision to both your perceived weaknesses and, more importantly, your untapped potential. So I urge you, stop running from it. Stop resenting every closed door, every perceived setback. Instead, begin to embrace them as opportunities. Every no is in disguise a doorway to your emotional freedom. It's a sign, a sacred signal, if you will. It's life telling you in no uncertain terms that it's time to stop begging for external approval and start the profound work of building your self-worth from the solid ground up. Will this journey be easy? Absolutely not. Will it be a quick fix? Not even close. But it is without a shadow of a doubt the only path to living a truly authentic life. Because genuine attraction, the kind that endures, doesn't blossom when you contort yourself into what you think others want. It ignites when you courageously become what you need. When you finally stop depending on the fluctuating winds of external opinions and choose with unwavering conviction to live by your own deeply held values, even if no one around you understands or applauds. That's where the real, undeniable magnetism lies, in relentless, unapologetic authenticity, in unshakable emotional independence, in the quiet, profound strength of someone who knows how to be alone, not out of loneliness, but because they have remembered and reclaimed their inherent worth. And when you finally truly grasp this on a soul level, rejection loses its formidable power over you, and you in turn reclaim that power as your very own. But here's a crucial twist in this narrative, a pivot point we often overlook. While you're consumed with the fear of rejection from others, you might be completely ignoring the most damaging rejection of all, the one you inflict upon yourself, day in and day out. How many times have you silenced your own authentic desires, your soul's whispers, just to try and fit into a mold that was never meant for your unique spirit? How often have you betrayed your own inner truth just to remain within the perceived safety of someone else's circle? Understand this. The worst rejection isn't the no you hear from the outside world. It's the subtle, insidious no you whisper to yourself every single day. It's the invisible rejection woven into the fabric of your daily choices, the soul-crushing job you stay in out of fear, the personal boundaries you allow to be violated, the yes you utter when every fiber of your being is screaming, no. That is the rejection that slowly, methodically erodes your soul. Not the occasional no from others, but the consistent, heartbreaking way you keep saying no to your truest self. The great Carl Jung issued a profound warning about this very dynamic. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Think about the implications of that. Those patterns of rejection you experience might feel like bad luck or destiny, but they could very well be orchestrated by the unacknowledged parts of your own psyche. Your shadow, that part of you that you're perhaps afraid to look at, to acknowledge, isn't your enemy. It's the wounded part of you crying out for your attention, your compassion, your reconciliation. If you look closely with courage and honesty, you'll start to see the patterns emerge: repeated painful experiences, unresolved relationship dynamics that seem to play out on a loop, conflicts that give you an eerie sense of déjà vu. That's not just a string of bad luck. It's not mere coincidence. It's your shadow knocking persistently on the door of your consciousness, trying to get your attention, trying in its own way to say, "Please stop ignoring me. Please come home to yourself." And so the question I want to leave you with today to truly ponder is this: what would happen if, instead of instinctively resisting rejection, bracing against its impact, you actually started to listen to it? What profound shifts might occur in your life if you finally bravely faced the truth about yourself that you've been subtly or not so subtly afraid to discover? This is the transformative power that lies at the heart of depth psychology, like the work of Jung. To become truly whole, to achieve that state of individuation, you must be willing to step into the very chaos, the very discomfort you've been diligently avoiding. You must face the fears. You must feel the insecurities. You must consciously, courageously enter the shadows. Because as long as you continue to ignore them, to push them down, you'll keep looking outside of yourself for a love, a validation, a sense of home that you will ultimately never find out there. Because what you truly desperately seek is buried deep inside within the very places you fear to tread. Yes, these inner landscapes can feel dark. Yes, exploring them can be profoundly uncomfortable. But facing them, integrating them, is the undeniable gateway to profound spiritual growth. That's where your hidden treasure lies. That's where your most authentic truth is patiently hiding, waiting to be reclaimed. And here's the ultimate paradox in this whole equation. The more you try to protect yourself from the sting of external rejection, the more ironically you end up rejecting vital parts of yourself. Want to hear something that most people never truly realize, a truth that often stays hidden beneath the surface of daily life? Most people will go to their graves without ever truly deeply meeting themselves. They live their entire lives wearing masks, playing predetermined roles, endlessly chasing external validation, all because, deep down, they're terrified of discovering something within themselves, something they fear they might not like, or something that might require them to change. But that fear, that persistent avoidance, that's precisely what makes them feel invisible, forgettable, and ultimately unmagnetic. The kind of raw, authentic presence we're talking about isn't born from a polished performance. It's forged in the fires of shadow work. Because, believe me, nothing is more compelling, more genuinely attractive than someone who has courageously faced their own darkness and through that journey chosen to love and accept themselves anyway, imperfections and all. And here's perhaps the hardest yet most liberating truth of all. When you finally summon the courage to face your shadow, when you embrace the so-called dark side of your soul, you stop fearing rejection from others. Why? Because you've stopped rejecting yourself. And once you reach that pivotal point of inner acceptance, no one else can ever truly take your power away from you again. And here's the beautiful payoff once you navigate and overcome that fundamental inner obstacle, that self-rejection. No amount of external rejection can ever truly dismantle you again. Because real, authentic detachment isn't about cultivating coldness or indifference. It's not an emotional shutdown. It's certainly not about pretending you don't care when you actually do. It is power. A quiet, unshakable power. A sacred clarity that emanates from your core, declaring to the world, and more importantly, to yourself, my worth is no longer up for negotiation. Detachment in this empowered sense means this: you no longer require external approval to know who you are. You don't bend and break your own values just to feel like you belong. You don't shrink yourself, diminish your light just to fit into spaces that were never meant for you. And that kind of profound inner independence, it's incredibly magnetic. Why? Because it's exceptionally rare. Because it's undeniably real in a world often saturated with pretense. Everyone on some level craves approval, but very, very few people ever learn how to genuinely approve of themselves. And when you do, when you truly, deeply do, you instantly, effortlessly stand out from the crowd. Not because you're trying harder than anyone else, but precisely because you're no longer trying to become anything you're not. Now I want you to take a moment and reflect on this. Think of the people you most genuinely admire. The ones who possess that quiet, compelling charisma. That grounded, almost unexplainable energy that draws you in. The ones who don't seem to need the spotlight, and yet paradoxically, they light up every room they enter. What do they all invariably have in common? They chose themselves, unequivocally, above the noise of opinions, above the weight of expectations, above the paralyzing fear of rejection. They looked their own shadows in the eye, and they made a conscious, powerful decision to live by their inner truth, not by the desire for external approval, to live by unwavering authenticity, not by a carefully curated performance. And that, my friends, is precisely why they attract effortlessly. Not by playing strategic games, not by using clever psychological tricks, but by simply being deeply, unshakably rooted in their own soul. You know, we often hear about reverse psychology as some kind of manipulative tool. But in this context, it's not a game at all. It's the organic, natural outcome when you cease the chase. Not just chasing others, but even chasing an idealized, externally validated version of yourself. The paradox here is stunningly beautiful and profoundly simple. The less you need external acceptance, the more it naturally flows to you. The less you actively pursue approval, the more genuinely you are respected. The less you desperately chase love, the more effortlessly you attract it into your life. Want to know where the real magic lies? When you stop seeking validation from outside sources, you create the space for life, for connection, for opportunity to find you organically without force. You transform into someone who flows with life instead of constantly trying to force outcomes. Someone who is guided not by fear and scarcity, but by a deep, unwavering inner truth. And when you finally arrive at that place, when rejection no longer holds that terrifying power over you because you no longer reject yourself, something radical, something fundamental shifts within you and around you. The world, in a sense, starts to seek you, because the world at its core is starving for genuine truth. And you, by virtue of your inner work, have become one of the few who courageously carries it. It's like this. You've been searching for the key to unlock your happiness and fulfillment everywhere, in other people, in achievements, in praise and accolades, but all along, that key has been right there in your own pocket. So I want to pose a direct question to you right here, right now. What would actually happen if, starting this very moment, you made the unwavering decision to choose yourself? What would your life begin to look like, feel like, if you consciously laid down every mask, every limiting label, every heavy expectation you've been carrying, perhaps for years? What if you stopped trying so hard to be someone and simply allowed yourself to become yourself? Fully and unapologetically, I'll tell you what would happen. You'd finally meet the part of you that's been patiently waiting all along. Through all the noise, beneath all the layers of fear, your true, undiluted essence. Patient, sacred, unshakable. So listen closely to this. Let it sink in. Don't waste one more precious second of your life begging for a seat at someone else's table. Don't wait for someone else to finally approve of the inherent masterpiece that you already are. Validate yourself. Choose yourself. Believe in yourself first and foremost. Because when you stop needing that external validation, you begin to attract everything you've ever truly needed. Not because you desperately begged for it, but because you finally authentically aligned with it. And if you've made it this far in this message, if these words are resonating deep within you, then maybe, just maybe, you're truly ready. Ready to face the real pivotal question. What would you do? Who would you become if you no longer needed anyone's approval to feel whole? What kind of magnificent life would you dare to build? What kind of profound love would you allow yourself to receive? What kind of vibrant, authentic energy would you radiate out into the world? Here's the final empowering truth I want to leave you with today. Once you truly overcome the deep-seated fear of rejection, you don't go back. Something inside you shifts permanently, irrevocably. You can't unsee your inherent worth. You can't unlearn your cultivated strength. And you finally profoundly realize you never actually needed anyone else to be whole. You always were. You just somewhere along the way forgot. And now you remember. Rejection was never the end of your story. It was always the beginning. The true beginning of discovering and embracing the real, authentic you. So I'll ask just one last thing, a question for you to carry forward. Will you continue to wait passively for someone else to decide your worth? Or will you finally courageously rise, not in angry defiance, but in quiet, powerful truth? Because rejection isn't a curse. It's a doorway. It's a test. It's an initiation into a deeper understanding of yourself and your power. And only a few, the brave few, dare to walk through it. Are you one of them? This right here is where the real magic begins. This is where rejection transforms from a perceived enemy into your most potent ally. Not because it suddenly starts to feel good, it often won't, but because it becomes an unwavering beacon, revealing profound truth. Every single time you're rejected, it's as if life itself is handing you a personalized map pointing directly to the unhealed wound you've been consciously or unconsciously avoiding. The tender place inside you that still aches, that still metaphorically bleeds, that still desperately needs your compassionate, healing attention. But here's the common problem. The trap so many fall into. Most people would rather look away. They'd rather deny the pain, numb the feeling, or lie to themselves about its impact. Because, let's be honest, facing the unvarnished truth about ourselves, especially the uncomfortable parts, always hurts, at least initially. But denying it? That's what prolongs the pain indefinitely. Do you want to access a kind of inner power that most people will sadly never even touch in their lifetimes? Then you must be willing to do what most people consistently avoid. Look directly, courageously at the thing you fear most inside yourself. Don't run from it. Don't distract yourself with endless scrolling or busyness. Don't try to numb it away. Instead, sit with it. That dark, shadowy part of you, the one that perhaps no one else sees but you know, is there. You've felt its presence in the quiet moments when no one else is around. That very place, believe it or not, is where your greatest untapped power sleeps, waiting to be awakened. Now, this brings us to one of the most fascinating and frankly exhausting paradoxes of modern life. We live in a world that is utterly obsessed with the appearance of perfection. Rejection is often hidden, artfully disguised as success or indifference. Pain is airbrushed out of the picture. Insecurity is filtered into oblivion. Social media feeds are frequently curated highlight reels full of smiling masks, carefully posed lives, and displays of manufactured confidence, all too often just clever ways to hide the silent ache that lingers behind the eyes. But have you ever paused to truly wonder what would actually happen if you didn't hide your scars, your vulnerabilities? What seismic shift might occur if instead of diligently covering up your wounds, you chose to embrace them publicly, proudly, as testaments to your journey? What if you dared to say out loud, "Yes, I've been rejected. Yes, I was afraid. Yes, I doubted myself intensely. But I chose to move forward anyway." That is the declaration that changes everything. Because here's the perfect irony. The more you try to hide your vulnerability, the less authentic you inevitably become. And people, whether they realize it consciously or not, can often sense inauthenticity from a mile away. But what truly pierces through all the noise of modern life, what genuinely touches human hearts, is not your carefully constructed perfection, but your raw, unfiltered, courageous truth. Your scars, your mistakes, and the lessons learned from them. Your story of survival and resilience. So stop treating rejection like some shameful, dirty secret to be hidden away. Start wearing it like a badge of courage, a testament to your willingness to engage with life fully. Because right there in your accepted, integrated weaknesses is precisely where your greatest, most authentic strength is born. But let me be absolutely clear on this point. I'm not talking about romanticizing pain or glorifying suffering. This isn't about wallowing in a victim mentality or getting stuck in past hurts. This is about rising. It's about consciously choosing to become a conscious warrior, someone who can walk through the inevitable fires of life without losing the core of who they are. You want to know what a real superpower looks like in the everyday world? It's the ability to admit to yourself and others that you can be rejected, without that rejection destroying your fundamental sense of self, without it demolishing who you are at your core. That is the moment you truly level up emotionally, because that's when you internalize one of life's most sacred and empowering lessons. Your identity, your worth, can never, ever truly depend on someone else's applause or approval. Emotional dependency. It's a silent poison. It may seem harmless at first, but it always eventually leads to a quiet, internal destruction of self. And please don't misunderstand me here. I'm not advocating for you to isolate yourself, to build impenetrable walls around your heart, or to detach from the world in a cold, disengaged way. No, in fact, it's quite the opposite. It's about learning to connect with others from a place of genuine strength, from a wellspring of inner fullness, not from a place of desperation or need. Have you ever noticed this phenomenon? The deepest, most authentic and nourishing relationships often materialize when you're not desperately chasing them, when you're not anxiously trying to orchestrate connection, when you're not subtly or overtly begging to be chosen. That's a universal law that few people truly grasp and integrate. When you stop chasing, you naturally begin to attract. But don't mistake this for passivity or inaction. Not at all. It's about living with so much purpose, with so much inner fire and passion for your own life, that you simply don't have the time or energy to obsess over whether or not you're being accepted by everyone. You become so full of your own authentic essence, so engaged in your own journey, that rejection, when it occurs, no longer fits into the central narrative of your story. Does rejection still happen? Yes, inevitably. But its impact on you diminishes dramatically, because you no longer hand over your power to it. Now, I want to challenge you with a slightly uncomfortable but illuminating mental exercise. Imagine this: you get absolutely everything you ever thought you wanted. Every dream you've ever chased comes true. Every person you desired says yes. Every external goal is met and celebrated. You're standing at the summit. And then what? There's a good chance, a very real chance, you'd feel an unsettling emptiness. A profound, "Is this all there is?" Because you'd finally viscerally realize the deepest truth. Nothing external, no matter how coveted, can ever truly fill an internal void. What completes you, what makes you feel whole, was never out there, was never in another person. It was never in their approval or validation. It was always and will always be found in your own inner recognition, your own self-acceptance. And here's the great trap that so many fall into. If everything you truly need to feel whole and worthy is already inside of you, why are you still waiting, looking outside of yourself for someone or something to give it to you? The answer, though often hard to admit, is usually quite simple. You're afraid. Afraid perhaps of discovering that everything ultimately depends on you. Afraid that no one is coming to save you. Afraid to accept that your healing, your sense of worth, your capacity for joy, has always been and will always be your own sacred responsibility. It's often easier to blame rejection for our unhappiness. It's easier to point fingers outward, to cast ourselves as victims of circumstance or other people's choices. But that's not power. That's avoidance. And right there in that very fear, in that moment of wanting to avoid responsibility, lies your doorway to true freedom. Because when you stop waiting for an external rescue, you stop feeling powerless. And now, we arrive at the ultimate liberating truth behind the psychology of rejection. Only when you truly understand on a cellular level that you don't need anything external to be whole, do you finally begin to attract everything you genuinely deserve. You don't attract from a place of need or lack. You attract from a place of wholeness, completeness, and self-sufficiency. And that one profound shift in perspective, it changes absolutely everything. Because you're no longer walking through life desperately trying to prove something to the world. You're simply powerfully walking in your truth. You no longer navigate the world with perpetually open begging hands, hoping for scraps of approval or validation. Instead, you move forward with a quiet, unshakable confidence, with a grounded, resilient independence, with an inner strength that emanates from your very core. Because now you know deep in your bones that your worth has never, ever depended on someone else's fleeting opinion. And it never, ever will. Let me leave you with a truth that cuts through the noise, a truth that few dare to articulate so plainly. Life in its deepest wisdom doesn't truly reward those who strive to blend in, to be palatable, to be echoes. It lavishes its richest rewards on those who dare to stand out, not through clamor and attention-seeking, but through the quiet, unshakable power of their authenticity. The ultimate irony in all of this society, in the end, often ends up chasing, admiring, and even glorifying those individuals who have completely stopped trying to be chased. It celebrates the rule breakers in the best sense, the courageous truth-tellers, the ones who live deeply from their soul. The most magnetic people aren't the ones who scream the loudest for attention. They're the ones who silently radiate an undeniable presence precisely because They no longer seek anyone's permission to simply exist fully and authentically. That is true power. That is pure, unadulterated magnetism. So I leave you with this final raw and deeply sacred truth. Rejection is not your enemy. Rejection is the sign. It's a clear, unmistakable sign that you're still searching outward in the external world for something that can only and will only ever be found within. Are you ready to finally stop running from yourself? Are you ready to turn around and meet the magnificent version of yourself that you've perhaps spent a lifetime avoiding? Are you ready to embrace rejection, not as a punishment or a mark of failure, but as the greatest, most transformative spiritual teacher that life could ever possibly offer you? Because in the end, when all is said and done, there's only one rejection that you may never truly recover from: the rejection of yourself. The profound tragedy of living your entire life without ever consciously, courageously choosing you. But now, if you've journeyed this far, you've seen the truth laid bare. The filters are off. The illusions have begun to dissolve. You've metaphorically walked the labyrinth of your own fears, and now you stand at the precipice, at the very edge of something far greater, far more expansive. And here comes the most breathtaking, awe-inspiring part of this entire journey. Rejection, all that pain, all that fear, was just the beginning. It was the necessary catalyst, the beginning of a deeper, more meaningful path, a more sacred, soul-aligned journey, a journey of profound, ongoing spiritual growth, a return not to someone else, not to an external source of validation, but a profound, life-altering return to yourself. And even though you now understand more about how your mind works, even though you've begun to unravel the hidden, often unconscious mechanics of rejection and self-worth, there is still one final ultimate truth left for you to discover. And it's one that no one, not even I, not any guru or teacher, can simply give to you. Because this truth can only be intimately discovered, deeply experienced, and fully embodied by the bravest, most authentic part of you. The part that no longer runs from discomfort. The part that remembers its inherent wholeness. The part that finally, unequivocally, chooses. The path ahead, it's yours now to walk with courage and intention. And the answer you've been so diligently searching for all this time, it has always been and will always be you.